Well, welcome to the Conscious Leaders Forum. I'm Dr. A, and we're going to be talking today about ourselves. We're going to talk about this incredible thing that we carry around with us called our ego. I'm excited because we're getting now into the more practical areas of our mind and our perception and our personal mind, and we're going to talk about some things that you can reflect on and start really becoming what I like to say is the end point, is that I truly believe we've been put on this planet to basically evolve our soul to the point where we're able to conduct ourselves as adults in a way where we can have joy. And although the world will happen and is intrinsically unstable, we'll be able to go through this path, through this brief time we're on the earth. For most of it, it's less than 100 years. And hopefully you'll, with time, learn how to adapt to that so you can have the things that you want in your life. So with that, basically, I like to always kind of refresh what we're here and what the format is. I like to do a little bit of teaching in the beginning to kind of set the framework for a really great discussion. And the discussion in a forum is about a place, a meeting, or a meeting where ideas and views on a particular issue can be exchanged. So I found that the most important part about this call is when you guys have an opportunity to ask questions, make comments, and we get into that discussion. I learn each time you guys have a question about yourself or about something going on around you. It gives me an opportunity to explore how do we address that? How do we move forward rather than pointing outside and pointing fingers like most of the world? How do we actually use this time together to improve our health, improve our mind, put ourselves in a position to truly thrive in our lives? So with that, is your ego running your life? Think about that for a minute. You may not have asked yourself that question and you go, wait a minute, I'm running my life. But maybe after we finish this little talk, you'll be thinking a little differently. So that yellow cog in the middle is our ego. It's the thing that makes everything happen around us. And the question is, do you have one? And the answer is we all have an ego. It shows up in many different ways, many different forms. We'll go over some of those ways and kind of help spot down what your ego is and what that really means. But your ego is your personal mind. It is your psyche. When we are born, we as mammals, and specifically human beings, we have the longest period of needing and nurturing of any species by far. And so when we're little, there's a long period of time where we're dependent on our parents to bring us up. And during that period of time, we want to maintain some degree of psychological safety to protect us. And so we kind of adapt these different mechanisms, to keep us safe, the way we think about things, the way we process, the way we suppress, the way we deny, the way we kind of become strong or resistant or resilient. And all these things become part of our ego. They actually is something we built. We built our ego. And our ego is there as this thing that helps keep us safe, at least in its own mind. And so we all have one. I'll just give you an example. You can be the richest person on the earth. You may be Forbes number one, the richest human around. And yet the next year, if you're picked and you're number two, your ego is all over that. Even though you have more money and more opportunities to do anything you want with your life, inside of you, that particular person, their ego is affected and they're wondering what? The rock star, right, that plays in sold out concert, wondering if the next one will be that way. These are all representations. Sitting there in your seat and the teacher calls on you and you answer in a way where you're not sure what everybody else thinks around you. See, we can handle stuff by ourselves, but when we're around other people, our ego there is there to protect us, to make sure we're showing up the way we want people to see us. And so we could convolute and make all these crazy things. So what is it? Basically, our ego is this thing, this persona, this personal mind, this made up resource that we use to basically decide what we like, what we don't like. And when we do get what we want, then we're happy. And when we don't get what we want, we're not happy. So you could be going down the road and it could be a beautiful day and your significant other says something to you about, oh, do you have a stain on that shirt? And just that, boom, we can go from this open joy, this gorgeous weather, And immediately our ego takes over and says, wait a minute, that's not right. I don't like how that orientation goes. There's something wrong with me. And then it affects us. And the rest of the day, you're thinking, I got to get home and get that little spot off my shirt, right? In the meantime, you happen to be living on a planet that's been here for 4.5 billion years in the middle of the black void where we haven't found in all the galaxies. We haven't found another place like this bright blue ball that we're on, where we got an opportunity to see different colors and sights and all these things. But instead of all that and appreciative of that, we're focused on this little spot that's on our shirt. That's your ego and full out pride for what it is and what it isn't. So it's those automatic thoughts. They come from nowhere. All of a sudden you look, it's that voice in your head that's talking to you. It's that just unstopping, this incessant chatter that goes on when you get up and where you're in the shower and it's going. If you just stop for a moment and pay attention and become present, you can hear it. It's talking about 20 different things. That's your ego. You should be sitting there in the shower, feeling the warmth of the shower and washing your body and feeling all those great sensations, but instead you're lost in thought. That's your ego talking to you. And it makes up stories. It is not accurate. It is not accurate in any way, shape, or form. And it's making up stuff. And it creates these self-concepts of what is right, what is wrong, what we like, what we don't like. And as a result of that, the world becomes a very frustrating place to live in. And we're trying to get the outside world to make a difference. So your ego is running the show. You know, an event, people, something happens, goes in, your ego gets a hold of it and basically starts creating automatic thoughts. I don't like the way they're looking at me. Sally didn't say hi. And, you know, Sally didn't hear you, but that doesn't matter. You make up these thoughts about, oh, Sally, what's wrong with it? What is she thinking about? And all of a sudden your ego is full out drama, emotional feelings, the drama trial is activated, and we go on and on. 95% of the world is living in the drama triangle because our ego is running the show. And what we do is we project out. Oh, how dare Sally? You know, you're expressing ourselves out. And then Sally, when you talk to her, actually, and you get the ego out of the way and you face reality, Sally, what's wrong? She goes, what do you mean what's wrong? She goes, well, I said hi to you and you didn't say anything. Oh, I didn't hear you. But your ego made up a whole story to protect you. The other thing we do is we resist or we cling. We resist feeling things that happen to us because they would not make us feel good. So we repress those. That's the stored trauma. Or we cling. We see something we love and we want it to be the same. You go on vacation and you have this amazing sunset and you're there and in harmony with whoever you're with. And then basically you want to go back to that place so you can recreate that. That's your ego trying to do that. And it's actually putting you to cling on to that moment in time. And when you go back this time, just so happens that you caught the flu and you're not feeling well. And all of a sudden the whole vacation is ruined. That's your ego talking. And we also suppress a lot of the things in that dialogue. So how do you deal with it? Well, basically know that the stored trauma, the negative thoughts, the likes and dislikes are all part of our personal mind. They're the ego deciding the way the world wants to be. And if you're not okay, it tries to change the outside world to make it okay. And yet the fact is that most of the stuff that's going on out in the outside world, you have little or no control over it all. And so we create these self-concepts. And so we're no longer looking at the world objectively. We're looking at it through the mind of our ego and our thoughts and our feelings. And it creates loops, and we sit there and we have that anxiety, that neurosis that you're worried about that. So let's take a couple examples of what happens. Our ego filters our reality. You know, what happened? And like we like to say, what happened actually would be a video. The video would show you exactly what happens, but what am I making it mean? Well, our ego interprets to create a narration that makes you more comfortable with the world around us. So we actually make it better for ourselves because we don't want to deal with the world as it actually is. So that's what creates stored trauma. So if you see a snake basically outside and it comes in, you should be scared. That your body's designed, when that snake comes inside and you see it, that you jump. You don't sit there and look at it and use your prefrontal cortex. You actually look and jump and then say, wow, thank gosh I had this mechanism inside of me, this emotional mechanism that made me leap out of the way so I didn't get hurt by it. So there is initially a very important reason why that mechanism is part of your brain and part of your mind and part of your defense in your sympathetic nervous system. Fight, flight, faint, or basically fall. You're basically in situation where you need help. But if it stays inside of you and you start thinking about it after the snake is gone, and you start building this fear and you resist, rather than letting that feeling go all the way through and say, whew, thank goodness I saw that, it scared me and I got out of the way, and that's the end of it. You start thinking about it and about snakes. And then the next thing you know is you're out, you want to go out and work in the garden, but you're sensing that there's a snake out there. And so when that happens, that's a destructive thought. You're no longer based in reality. You're actually responding to something from the past that you stored inside of you. And now you're scared to go work out in the garden, which is perfectly, in fact, you saw the snake in Arizona out in the desert, and now you're back in Baltimore, Maryland, out in the countryside, where the only snake you would ever possibly see would be a garter snake. There's not even any poisonous snakes, but it doesn't matter because that stored trauma, your ego has stored that and now has a way of thinking of the world of what it dislikes, and it doesn't want to see a snake again. So it basically puts you in position where you start building that neurosis and you get anxiety. And that anxiety is that fear that's built, and it builds and builds and builds. And pretty soon we can't even stand walking down the road. We see a rope that's laying on the road. We think it's a snake, or we hear a baby rattle and we think it's a snake. So all those things get built up in the stored trauma, which the ego supports and builds a self-concept about. So same thing with like even a puppy. You feel a puppy and you go, oh, you're joyful. And so then you go and you think, oh God, I want a puppy. And then you get a puppy and you have the puppy and you're really enjoying it. And then you come home and the puppy pottied on the floor, and all of a sudden now you're not happy and you're irritated with the puppy because basically it's not done something. It isn't within that perception of what your ego said was the joy. The joy is to see the puppy, go, oh, that's cute, and then move on with your day, not to cling on to it. So really important that we realize that, because events trigger our concepts of how things should be. These are unfinished mental patterns and emotional patterns, and they're stored thoughts that we've either resisted, pushed down like coiled springs, or we basically clung to them because we really enjoyed it. So let's say, you're in high school and you went out on a date or met somebody and you really liked them and you had a wonderful, it seemed like you had chemistry together and everything was great. And so then you ended up being their fiance or getting married. And then, if you're dependent on conditional love for them being a certain way, and then over time they change or something else happens, in a second, that love certainly gets closed off because we want the world to be a certain way. That's your ego saying, oh, I need the world to be a certain way for me to have love. And we'll talk about in just a moment here that basically there's a better way. There's a different way, a way where you can have unconditional love, where the love comes from you. Basically, other people, other things, we use those things to open ourselves up to bring happiness, but unless it's coming from the inside, it's short-lived. So there's two distinct ways of living our lives. One is the outside, where everything is dependent on what's going on the outside, and our ego tries to fix everything by looking and saying, okay, this is the way I want it to be. And it's like a broken clock. It's correct 2 times a day. But otherwise, the times we're happy when the world is right, and there's times when we're having a wonderful time. But all it has to do is in a second, something can change and some condition can change. You have a beautiful car and you walk out and you're happy because you bought it and you're driving it, and you come out from the shopping and you look and there's a scratch on the car, and all of a sudden you're miserable, right? Rather than saying, oh, there's something I need to get fixed, you look at it and then the rest of your day you are miserable because that's your ego. Your ego's taking saying, that is not the way, the world shouldn't be like that. Someone shouldn't have scratched my car. Of course they shouldn't. But basically they did for whatever reason, or it might have been an accident. It doesn't matter. You'll build a big story about it and you will diffuse. And even though you might be going to see your young child at a soccer game, you'll be miserable that whole time there because you'll be thinking, because your ego say, that's not right. I need to make the world right. And the inside way is being awakened and understanding that everything that happens in my life basically is happening because I choose to be enjoyed, to be happy. And I'm making the choice that no matter what happens on the outside, I've chosen to really be appreciative and have gratitude and not resist and literally let anything that happens, which could be negative. So that scratch is, oh God, that upsets me. It's okay for it to upset you, but then you let it go. You don't put it inside. You let the feeling go all the way through. You don't start adding that stuff and building it into this mechanism. So if you think about it, your ego takes it and says, I am not okay, and I'm going to look outside to be okay. So, if I get the special job, if I get the corner office, if I get the house on the ocean, then I'll be okay. But until that point, I'm not going to be okay. So in that point, and then as soon as you get that, then there'll be something else you want. Because if the issue's inside and you're not okay, it does not matter what you get. They'll only be temporary because they kind of open you up for a minute and you flow and you enjoy, and then something else will happen because you haven't got rid of your stored trauma. You haven't got rid of this stuff inside of you, this ego inside of you that wants the world to be a certain way. And then when it's not that way, and temporary measures will only bring you out of it for a moment or two, and then basically you'll go back into it. When you're awakened, I'm looking inside to become okay. So rather than looking outside for the solutions, I'm looking inside and starting to notice when I feel that icky sauce, to stop, challenge, why am I feeling that? What's going on? Let that emotion go fully through. Like right now I'm angry, or right now I'm sad, and it's okay. But then we let it go. And then we look, is there something inside that got triggered? And let me bring that up. So we're going to talk in a moment here, but when you're in an ego-driven world, I'm not okay. Taking from the outside. We need to take things from the outside. We need to have things because we're closed. And the only time we open up and let all this energy inside of us, which is naturally there, by the way, even when you're massively depressed, it's because you're looking at something. You're not looking at all the joy and all the things that are inside of you. You're actually looking outside at something. And you could have you could be on the ocean and basically have a gorgeous clear lake behind you, which is the joy inside of you, but you're looking at the ocean and you're trying to find little puddles where you can drink some water versus simply stop looking at what isn't working and turn around and look at what is. But if the world is working our way, we're okay. But if it isn't, we feel terrible. You'll feel those feelings, and those feelings are your ego trying to adjust and make the world okay. And by the way, you built your ego from a little kid moving forward. We have built our personal concepts. We built our personal mind of how the world should be and it shouldn't be. And that's why most people, as Thoreau said, live lives of quiet desperation, because they stay fixed on having the world, their persona, their preferences, having to be a certain way. And when they're not that way, they're miserable. So that's really important to understand. And that is a made up thing. You can actually change and say, as you awaken, say, I'm okay. And rather than taking from the world, you're giving to the world. As you're helping other people, there's nothing better than the joy that comes from that, because you're open. You're filled with joy and love. You're creative. You want to help others. It doesn't matter what the world is doing. You have the opportunity to serve others. And Martin Luther King said that a long time ago, that we don't really understand the full joy of life until we're in the service of others. And so it's available. In a second, you can start making the decision to work on that and change everything. So I'm okay. How do you get there? Well, it starts with conscious witness. It's actually moving back away from your ego, away from your thoughts, your feelings, and even your actions basically are based on your ego. So you want to move away from them, get out and start observing. So with that, what opens us up? So, think about, the joy of a beautiful sunset, or think about going to your child's graduation, or think about getting that prom dress you really liked, or think about, reciting something that really matters, and recognize I'm open. And what caused me to open? Was it something external to me? Because if it was, there's a reason why you're closed. And the other thing is you want to start practicing, and you practice letting go of closing. So again, excuse me, a great example would be, you want to look at the low-hanging fruit. So again, the one I like to use, because it affects me and I've had to practice, is I live in an area where ridiculous, the speed limit goes down to 45 miles an hour, even 35 in some areas. And you have one road, you can't go around. It's a double line. There's lots of stuff going on. and you have somebody that's driving 25 in a 35 and you're behind them, you can't pass them. You can either sit there and get upset and say, I'm not okay, and get irritated and start getting more upset. And you're clicking inside of your ego, and your ego is starting to create this emotive loop where you're getting angry. And what benefit is it? Really, what benefit? You know, if you went into your boss and said, hey, I have a proposition, I'm going to do something which has no benefit and 100% cost. And your boss would look at you and say, no, we're not doing that. Then why would you, in a situation where you can't go around, why would you get yourself so irritated, create all this sympathetic outflow, epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol release? You're agitated. You're not able to even think straight. You're getting so upset about it. And it has no benefit. It actually has and as a physician that helps people create health, it's emotional mismanagement, and it causes over time disease. It causes heart disease and diabetes and all these secondary things. And why would we do it? Why would we not instead say, okay, I'm stuck behind this person. This person may be, you know, for me, I live in Florida. This person may be 85 years old and they're doing the best they can. Rather than beat up on them, I should say, okay, I have another 5 minutes. It's going to take me to get where I'm going to go. Why don't I just take some deep breaths, relax, listen to listen to some good music, or put on a podcast, or think about, if I'm going to a meeting, how I can prepare myself better for the meeting, and turn that into something positive where I'm now giving versus taking and being frustrated about it. I mean, it's really that simple. It's taking that low-hanging fruit and practicing it. And you can let go by just opening back up and saying, oh, that person in front of him, I don't know what's going on, but, I'm going to have patience. I'm going to take a deep breath. You could even do a mantra, and I'm going to relax into this versus get stressed about it. So what in essence I'm saying is there's no one giant step. We spend a lot of time going to the gym to exercise. We spend so little time in the mental gym. So what I suggest you do, again, going back to this slide, is start with little things, low-hanging fruit. The weather, you were hoping it was going to be sunny. You wanted to go out and catch some rays and be in the sun today, but it's cloudy. Instead of getting upset about that, looking at it and saying, I have no control. No matter what my ego wants to do other than upset me and causing great cost to me, what can I do about that? Well, I can go inside, and maybe today, rather than do that, I'll go inside and rearrange my closet. I've been wanting to do that for a month, or I'll do something else that's productive, or I'll read a book, or I'll work on something else, and take control, become the dominant force in your own life rather than letting it bother you. So there is no one giant step, but lots of little ones that can make the difference. And so what we're looking to do is go from this filtered, ego-driven world where I'm not okay, and everything I do is an attempt to make me okay, whether it's getting a new car or buying a new dress. And instead, I'm going to look at life unfiltered, that everything happening is happening for a reason, and I can use this to learn and grow and become more. So again, I like to end with this, but the whole idea of what we're doing to really build full bliss in our lives where we're stable is to have that internal stability. No matter what happens, we're able to, like water on a duck's back. We have the emotional agility, the flexibility that we can adapt to it, notice it. Certainly if it's something negative, address it, but then we can move on and we're okay. And the same thing, because what that allows us to do then is externally to have equilibrium with the people around us. Our ego can handle, we can handle certain things when we're alone because we do a little self-surveillance. But most of the time when we're with others, we get triggered by so many things. And so it's so critical that we get our ego under control. So hopefully that was helpful, kind of set up for what we're doing. And now, Rach, let's open this up for Q&A and take it off of the shared, we'll take it off the shared.
All right. First up, we have Shelly. Shelly, can you come on camera? Unmute yourself.
Yes.
Hi,
Dr. A.
Hi, Shelly. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for these, by the way. I have a question for you, kind of getting back to the emotional management. For many of us emotional eaters, sitting in our emotions, or the icky sauce, as you say, is a new concept to us, as we didn't really want to feel our emotions. We numbed them instead with food. So My question to you is, what does sitting in emotion look like? You mentioned 90 seconds to process an emotion. Can you walk us through a little bit of a process? Is there something we can focus on? Do we focus on, the part of the body where we feel it?
Yeah, no, I love that. It's a great question, Shelley. And it's a question that so many people, struggle with. So I like the, little picture I show of the little Asian boy that's sitting on the side of the bank. And just looking, right? Just looking. So the first part in regulating our emotions and regulating ourselves is awareness, right? So that's the first part. It's that awareness, and it can be it's going to be different for everybody. But
Right.
I created Stop, Challenge, and Choose, almost 2 decades ago now, as that between stimulus and response, because when you're an emotional leader, the stimulus creates immediate response. And so you don't think about it, and you've habituated it, and you've used it to soothe. It might have been when you were small, like we were talking about it. And so it's incorporated into your behavior. So it's one of your preferences. And so it becomes so facile that it happens without you thinking about it. So the key part of any kind of redirection of your life is to say, okay, I'm not okay. I do this and I want to be okay. So the difference between living the two lives is, one is I'm going to look for outside things. So it's real important. This is probably the most important concept of what we've been talking about today. It's that I am letting my ego run my life. And so my ego is that I get very emotional and there's things inside of me. And how I found that I correct or pleasure myself is when I eat when I'm stressed. And so it becomes a reactive stimulus response. So the first thing to do is recognize that this is what's going on. The second thing then is to start practicing. It's kind of like the violin, right? You're not going to be able to do Beethoven the first time you get to a violin. You're going to learn how to, and I don't even know how you do it because it's amazing. There's no frets or anything, but obviously there's an art to it. And then people become over time really good, but they don't start off like playing Beethoven. They start off by learning where the strings are, learning how to move up and down, how to use the bow. The same thing with you or anybody that's struggling with emotionally is the first thing is just become aware. You can be aware of the sensations. I think that's a really good, because the early on, when you catch it early on, when it doesn't have time to fester, in other words, once it's in the drama triangle and you're really upset, it's too late, because this part of your brain is no longer working. Your limbic brain's working, your prefrontal cortex, which is allow you to make rational choices, do the right things, be able to look in time so that you organize your life around what matters most and to the future you want. That goes away as soon as you get into the drama triangle. So it's key to pick it up early. So it's usually body sensations. It's usually a feeling in your gut or in your jaw or in your throat. It could be in your heart area. As soon as you feel that, you want to stop and you want to basically disengage that. And then if it's already starting, kind of sense, okay, I'm feeling, and if you can identify the emotion, right, that's good, because then you can then manage it and then let that emotion, as you said, Shelley, you basically just let the emotion take its course and it'll go away in like 90 seconds. The other part is be curious as, why did this close me? So if your heart, you have an energy, in the Eastern religion, they talk about Shakti, which is energy. We have this amazing energy. And that energy can open up in a second and close in a second, right? So let's say, you're with your boss and your boss just gave you 4 more jobs and you were planning on going away for the weekend and now you're upset. And so you go home and you're closed, and you go home and you're not very nice to your spouse and your kids. You kind of ignore them because your ego is fully engaged, right? Or your boss gives you a raise, you come home and you're open. So opening and closing of our energy in our heart and our feeling of joy, all those things are determined by what's there. So what we want to do is start unloading. Emotional eating is about stored trauma, things you have that trigger you, and then your response is pleasing yourself by eating as a stimulus response. So the first part is to identify it, and the second then is to take a deep breath, do a mantra, don't allow yourself to close, stay open, think of something joyful, substitute something joyful in your life, positive in your life versus that negative part. And what will happen is it's not going to be easy. It's not something that just happened overnight, but you start getting, like I said, a bunch of little baby steps, right? To have this giant leap forward. And the baby steps are, you'll start to see more and more And what will happen is, as you take the low-hanging fruit and use that as a test, you're exercising, you're practicing, just like the violin. You're practicing being in control so that stimulus no longer engages you to start feeling that way. And instead, you feel a different way because you're in control of that. Our ego is sitting there running the show because you've let it run the show, and you've let it run the show for years. It's the same ego that was there when you were 7 years old and basically was upset because someone called you something, or when you were a little kid took your toy, or when you were in high school said, you had zits. It doesn't matter what it is. That's all not you. It's you simply reacting to something and conceptually building this barrier, this wall around you to protect you, which now isn't protecting. It's actually backfiring. And it's actually causing you to eat without even thinking about it. So the key part is awareness. And once you do that, then you can use those other little pieces, just standing, changing your posture. All those things can start now creating that challenge that creates choosing an outcome that allows you to diffuse it. And it'll go away. It's designed, the mechanism is designed to keep you from getting bit from that snake. It's not there to basically have you think about snakes for 2 hours. It's not there to have you thinking about because your boss said something and now you ate a bowl of M&Ms. So the first thing you do, obviously, is remove yourself from those temptations so they're not there, so it's not easy to make that choice. Make it harder. That's what the habits of healthy surroundings are all about. So you buy your willpower at the grocery store. Don't bring home candy. Don't bring home ice cream. Don't bring home things that you could immediately go to during that, if you don't have that pause and you start drifting down into the drama triangle. Make sure that number one, you become aware, and then number two, don't have those adjuvants that normally you would use as pleasure available. Make them so they're hard to get.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And thank you. So if I'm hearing you, the 90 seconds is spent, well, first after we recognize it, the 90 seconds is spent just sitting in it, but maybe focusing on it, because the problem with, what was happening to me is my mantra was, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat, which doesn't work, right. So, but I did start breathing through it and focusing on the part of the body where I was feeling it and bright. And then after the 90 seconds, I felt kind of a calm. Is that?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
That's it. See, the thing is, you have these patterns. They're habitual habits.
Yeah.
And you ingrain them. And when, a lot of these things happen when we're young, it just is the way it is. And we, and our parents were doing the best they could. And we might be more aware of it today than we were 20, 30 years ago. But the point is that they're habitual patterns, and you need to break the pattern. And the way to break it is the first response is almost always emotional. It's a feeling, because those feelings, and I like to use the snake because, a rattlesnake, if you didn't have that part of your brain, so we say, well, why do we have this? Why do we have an ego? Because in its pure form, the limbic area in our brain was a protective mechanism. 10,000 years ago, there's a lot of things that could kill you, right? And you didn't have all the safety, you didn't have alarm systems, you just were out there in nature. And so these things were built in there to protect us. They were real threats that the limbic areas worked on. Today, in the modern world, they're mostly perceived threats, right? They're us being upset about something that someone said, or again, it happens. It's much more intensified when we're around people. We can handle it sometimes when we're alone, but it gets to the point where if you have a low self-worth and your ego's sitting there and saying, well, have a bowl of ice cream because that'll make you feel better about yourself. No, it won't. You have to address what the triggered stored trauma was. And the idea is, if you can sense it early, you're actually switching on this area of your brain versus that area of your brain.
Yeah.
So that's the key difference. And then the actual motion itself, the trigger was designed to basically get you away, right? You either fought, you basically froze, you fainted, or you fell. And what that did was that was your natural protection. You watch that all the time. The deer in the headlights, right? Freezes. Not necessarily the best way to protect themselves, but those things are part of our part of our physiology and part of our anatomy. And so we have to know that today, especially if we have these habitual patterns where we get triggered and we eat, we need to stop the pattern. And the first way to stop it is awareness. The second way is to deal with that physiology. And that physiology is very brief. And then what you're doing is you're also using it is, okay, don't close. Don't allow yourself to close. And so that energy stays open. And then what you'll start sensing is, wow, I handled that. Wow, that's a positive feedback loop. I handled that. I went for a walk. Rather than say something, I drank water. I did something that made it so easy to handle it. And that gets easier and easier. And what will happen is, because we have all this stuff concealed like springs that are pushed down, as you start getting the low-hanging fruit, you'll get better through practice, just like the violin, and then you'll be able to handle bigger things. You don't start off with a huge thing about, you have mommy issues or daddy issues. You don't start there. You start with the low-hanging fruit. You learn the mechanism using that don't close, basically a mantra, breathing, not resisting, and allowing it to happen and move forward. And then that'll start bringing up the bigger things. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Congratulations on doing the work. This is the most important work you'll ever do in your life. When you lay down on the pillow at night, no one else is around you. There's no one external to you to help you. It's you. And if you can lay down and sense that, wow, today I worked on myself. I made some small strides. It's like Columbus. They were going like 4 knots, right? And his crew were getting pretty spooked. And he wrote every day in the journal, we made progress today, right? Maybe been only 4 knots and they had to go, 2,000 miles, but they made progress. And that's how we change our patterns, our preferences, and we start living a non-dual life where it's not what we like or dislike. We don't need anything outside us to make us whole inside. It's the inside job. And if we realize we're not okay and we start working on that, everything can change. And it's going to take time.
Yep, you got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Cool. All right, who's next?
All right, next up we have Amanda. Amanda, can you come on camera? Unmute yourself.
Hey.
There you are.
Hey, Amanda.
So, hi, Dr. A. First of all, what an honor it is to actually be on this Conscious Leadership Zoom. And I have a question for you. I want to know, how do you respond when a coworker is challenging you? So basically challenging you and challenging your ego.
Yeah, that's a great question. You'll actually do exactly what I just did, what I just talked about. This is the beauty of this. And this is something that most people probably wouldn't even agree with me with, but nobody can upset you other than who?
Me,
You.
well, myself.
Exactly. Only you. And what's upsetting you is not really you, not the essence of you, not Amanda, this consciousness, this awareness. It's your ego. Your ego's got this job. You didn't ask it to do the job. It just, you built this thing, this monster inside of us, which is totally inaccurate, making up stuff all the time. Like you may have, you're waiting for, you're waiting for someone that you liked and you liked them a lot and they were supposed to call you at 3:30, right? And they didn't call you to 4. Your ego said, no, that's not acceptable. And now you're pissed at them. And it could be that they were caught in a place where their cell phone is working or their cell phone died. Could be a million reasons, but your ego now has created a story. Doesn't even have to know what's going on. Okay, so know this. Do not take anything personal. If someone shot you in the head, it's not about you. It's about them. It would hurt a lot, but it's not about you. And here's the beauty. If they basically threaten you or attack you or try to make you feel bad, if you don't do this, right, and you're here and they're doing this, basically they'll go down to here. Remember, an ignored guest will quickly leave, right?
That is golden. Yes.
Yeah, they're looking for you. They're looking to charge you. They're looking to, it's like, like a banjo. They're looking to pluck those strings and get you agitated, right? And so what you're actually doing, words are one thing, actions are another. And you stop challenging. I know sometimes I'm in meetings and someone will say something and, it doesn't doesn't affect me like it used to because I've done this work. And now it's something I may be angry for a moment and it's like water on the top of the surface. It rides itself. I notice it and then it goes away. It doesn't stick. It's like the difference between Velcro and Teflon, right? Think of it that way. If you're
Right.
Teflon, baby, whatever they say just rolls off and it doesn't affect you. If you're like basically Velcro and it sticks to you and now you take it and you build a feeling from it and then it becomes a cognitive motive loop and it pisses you off for the rest of the day. What is the benefit, Amanda, to you if that happens? Nothing. Zero
I
benefit.
mean, you really just, exactly.
Yeah. So that's so,
Right.
so what you're doing is, one of the first things when I really realized what was important to live a life well lived that allows you to have joy. We choose, by the way, we choose what emotion to have. I choose to have joy in my life. From the time I get up to the time I go to bed, my main emotion is in the creative process, sharing with it, doing this. I mean, I love it. I love this as much as going to a great dinner or going sailing, because the joy is that I'm able to share something that I've helped. My intrinsic motivation by definition is something you're passionate about, something you want to get better at, and something you want to share with others. That's the definition. So for me, I'm highly intrinsically motivated because this is something that I realize in my 20 plus years of helping others, that this is more important than anything. There's nothing even close to this work. This work inside of getting rid of our childhood patterns, these things in our ego, and these persona things that have been dictating us, creating the same behaviors, same conditions, the default future of where most people go because they hang on to what they know versus build what they want, right? Changes everything. So basically, when you're with someone else and they're taking it, that's their ego trying to somehow bully you. I mean, I don't know the conditions, but their ego's trying to do something to make them, they're projecting onto you something that they're struggling with because they're not okay inside. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. That answers my question 100%.
Good. Thank you for last night.
Thank you, Dr. A.
That was so sweet.
Oh, you're welcome.
Right.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay,
All
who's next?
right. Next up, we have Tanya. Tanya, can you unmute yourself? There you are.
Hi, Tanya.
Hi, Dr. A. I know that this business is really important in terms of relationships, building relationships with people as we serve them and help them. And as we're working on our own egos, how can we respond? How can we best respond to people who don't fight against us, but are so super sensitive and so tied in with their ego that they take offense at anything we may say or the way we may behave? How do we respond to those kinds of people?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, especially when we're just in the beginning of doing our own work. But this is what I would say. All of it stems around you doing the inside work, right? I'm going to make a statement here, which is just completely accurate. You cannot change anyone else's behavior. You have no ability to change someone else's behavior. Your job as a coach is to awaken them. And actually our job, here's an interesting thing. Jim Defner said this in Dallas when we were together, and I really think this is a profound difference. As coaches, we're empathetic and we want to help people. But what part of that is that we want to help people, and helping people isn't what we want to do, because help in essence says that we're a hero, right? We're a hero helping them. What we really want to do is support people. We want to support them from where they are. So rather than, because you'd like to help them and fix them and you see things about them, you can't do that unless you support them. So if right now they're pissed at the world or they're upset about something, you have to support them with that feeling, because that's where they are. You can't say, no, don't have that feeling. So what you do is you ask the questions, because if someone's upset or has a strong emotion or opinion or wants the world a certain way, their ego is not open. I dealt with this just today. if someone's ego is really strong, you can't say get rid of your ego. You just have to somehow make them aware that the results they're getting are not where they want to be. So the whole point is, if your ego's running your life, you're getting the same results, and you have to ask yourself, are these patterns creating the success in my life and bringing me more joy or less joy? And if they're not bringing you more joy and they're less joy, it's probably because you're trying to get the world to be a certain way, or get something outside of you to fix you, or buy something to fix you, or get a drug to fix you, or whatever it is, versus saying, you know what, I'm not okay. And I'm going to do the work now through what we were talking about, whether it's staying open, doing a mantra, basically taking a deep breath and not allowing myself to be caught up in this cognitive emotional loop, which means our thoughts lead to an emotion, the emotions lead to the thought, and you get a loop that goes on and on and on. And if they're in that drama triangle, when you're talking to them, we call it upset technology, but there's 3 questions you can ask them: what happened, what was missing, and what's next? And if you ask those questions in a serial pattern, because remember what we were talking about earlier, most emotions last 90 seconds unless you're like Velcro and you grab onto them and now nurture them and fester them and have them go over and over and over and create anxiety and more anxiety. If you actually stop, challenge, and say, okay, I'm having this emotion, let me do one of these techniques to allow the emotion to go by and not put it in. The first part of working on yourself is to not put any more stuff in there, right? You know, it's fine that you're going to bring all this stuff up slowly but surely over time. It may take months, may take, weeks, months, years to get everything out of it. But each time you're getting a little better and a little more in control and a little more not triggered by this previous stuff. All that stuff puts you in better position where you're not letting other people trigger you. Because if you're letting someone else that their emotions or their ego is high, and you allow that to trigger you and get you in that loop, you're going down to the drama triangle, and you're no longer being a coach. You're being what? A hero.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome. Cool. What else we got?
All right. Next up, we have Susan. Susan, can you come off camera? Unmute yourself. There you are.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Dr. A. This might have already been answered, but how is our ego and our values different?
That's a great question. Yeah. So, okay, that's really good. In fact, I've never been asked that question, but let's talk first about the purity of your values. Your values are the things that are most important to you. Like they usually revolve around your children, maybe your health, your bill security, it doesn't matter what they are. Your highest values are things that don't need a lot of motivation to do, right? Okay. Our ego is really doing something very different. It's in essence saying inside of us, we're not okay. Excuse me. And if we get the world to be a certain way, we will be okay. Your ego is based in beliefs. Your values are actually intrinsic to you. These are things that resonate. They're usually in harmony with who you are. And like your kids, like your kids, a mom who's in a hotel and their kids, let's say, are around the other side and the building catches on fire, and the only way they can get to their kids is, go out on a ledge 60 stories up and get to them. They're going right after it. They're not letting that scared that they might fall off the ledge. They're going to get their kids because they value that very much. So your true values are the things that are matter. Your ego supports your likes and dislikes. These are your preferences. They're not necessarily things that are really even that important to you. At one time they were. So the ego is this thing we built about what we like and we don't like. And that's just like, you notice sometimes, I'll take an example. Let's say when you're a kid, most kids don't like asparagus or broccoli, right? And so they say that and say, I don't like those. And even when they get into adulthood, their ego saying, no, I don't like those. When the reality is they haven't tried it in 20 years. And what your values would be is that, yeah, broccoli is very good for me. My ego's saying I don't like it, but let me try it again, right? Because I value my health and I know it can be helpful. So one is something that's intrinsic to us, something that's really important to us. And the ego has just created a scenario where it's found that when it does this, I'm okay. And so it tries to change the world. And so I know you're still a little confused. So tell me what you're actually thinking about.
I'm thinking also with boundaries, in regard to these two subjects, I guess. You know, we hear a lot about setting boundaries, but that also sounds contradictory to staying open.
Okay, so you're talking about pretty complex things. Boundaries are guardrails of things that'll. Okay, let me back up for a minute. I'll tell you something. We wouldn't need, if we were truly conscious, if we were fully okay, if we were 100. This is an interesting thing, but if we were completely okay and we were generating joy, appreciation, and gratitude. I mean, honestly, if you think about it, that we're even on this planet, being able to be here, we should be so grateful every moment of every day, right? And basically, because I mean, there's nothing else out there. We got dropped on this incredible place where, I mean, this morning I was sitting outside and the bird was singing. Where did birds come from? I mean, and singing this beautiful song. And I could be in my mind upset about something, or I can actually fully be present and say, oh, look at this great gift I've gotten, right? Does that make sense? So if we start there and if we actually appreciate and we're grateful and we have the spirit, we want to go out and create and share and help others, we wouldn't even need laws. We wouldn't need any laws at all because everybody would respect that. We need laws because we're not okay. And we want things out there that we want to take that will make us okay, right? And if we didn't have laws, we'd go out and take everything because that would make our egos happy, right? We go get in the biggest house, we go steal somebody's car, and if it was okay. So boundaries are a set of parameters we put around ourselves of things that allow us to say, okay, over this line I won't tolerate. So Amanda was saying, what if someone is, talking to me and, really egoic strong, you set a boundary. And the boundary is that, okay, I sense this and I'll take a little bit and I won't let it bother me. But if it becomes offensive to the point where it is bothering me, I'll just say, you know what? And you just say, excuse me, and you walk away. So in other words, there's a threshold in interaction in relationships where you set a boundary about, no, I'm just not going to stay here in this environment. There's no need for me to stay. I'm not going to engage you. I'm not going to the drama triangle. I am moving myself away. Same thing with, little things like people being late, right? If someone's chronically late, you call them out on it and say, listen, my time is valuable too. I appreciate it. But when you say we're going to have dinner at 7 o'clock and you show up at 8 o'clock, there's an hour where I'm waiting there that I could be doing something else with. So here's the boundary. You're a friend and I appreciate it, but that doesn't work for me. So yeah, boundaries are relational things we do that set guidelines about what, if you cross over it. Same thing with the full body yes. There are going to be things, especially in a business where you're helping people, where people are going to take advantage of you. They want to be the victim. They want you to be the hero. You're not the hero. You're the coach that supports them, not the hero that helps them. So if they forget their feelings or forget to order or forget to do something, that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to show them, guide them, support them of what they need to do. And then if that happens more than once or twice, then you sit down and you have a discovery period where you say, I'm not doing that. Or if there's something you've done and you don't really want to do, but you're a nice person, that's your ego saying you're the nice person. This is something you don't want to do. And actually, if you have to do it, you're not going to be happy doing it. So you say no to it. You say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And you don't wait till the moment to cancel. You basically learn to have a full body yes, which means in my mind and in my heart and in my gut, I'm saying yes, because this is something that I want to say yes to, not something I don't. Now, obviously with your kids, you may not feel like taking them to gym practice, but you got to do it anyway. Because your values are that you value that they're able to go, because you know that gymnastics is going to keep them from going out to the mall and smoking pot with their friends, right? So, does that make more sense for you now?
Yeah,
Good,
that helps.
good. Awesome.
All right, thanks.
Cool. All right. All right, we have time for maybe one or two more, depending on how much
Yes.
I talk.
Well, we have one more. Shelley, there you are.
Hi, Shelley.
Hey, Dr. A. Thanks for doing this. The question that I have is, when you are working with people to share their story and to offer this amazing gift that we've been given, it seems like when you're helping them share, there's the ego comes in, right? And is like, doesn't want you to share, doesn't want you to talk to people, doesn't want you to tell your story with boldness. And a lot of times in conversations that come up, it's like people feel like they're being altruistic, or they're being respecting other people. They're not being pushy, however words they want to say, about sharing their story. But in helping them and knowing what a benefit it is to them and what it is to others, seems like their ego gets in their way and it's keeping them trapped. And how do you go about, I know you can't just flat out say, hey, it's your ego. So what do you do instead?
Yeah, I'm guilty doing that sometimes. I've done that with my daughter before, and it's not helpful. It's not helpful.
Yeah.
But what is helpful is to understand that's the operating principle, right? Their ego is they don't want to be rejected. See, their
Right.
ego is trying to keep them safe, and rejection is a huge thing. And so their ego is saying, wait a minute, you're not comfortable doing this. You haven't done this before. Don't do it. And so they're going to use the excuse and say, well, I don't want to bother people or whatever. But the reality is that it's their ego. So again, you can't say that directly to them, but what you can do is make them aware of what they're really doing. And so what I like to do is really focus, like, for instance, in this mechanism, this mission, if you think about it, what has it done for you? So I start there. What has it done for you? And for most people that have learned, they're learning, that the habits of health, they're learning to become healthy, they're learning to become fit, they're learning to have more control over their lives, they have more time. All these things are beneficial to us. And so what I basically, and I'll say this because we don't have a lot of time here, but I'll say this. If someone says, well, I don't want to share, the question would be, and you don't say it this way, but what, don't you like them? Because this has been so bad. Your experience in this, in what you're offering, has been tremendously beneficial. Even if somebody doesn't say yes, you at least have presented something to them in a non-sales way by sharing and caring that could put them in position to have a difference in their health, their well-being, in their life with their family. And so with that, it's important to have them become aware of that, where now they understand that, I'm not selling and telling, I'm sharing and caring. And by doing this, I have the opportunity to make an impact in their life if they're open. If they're not open. So if you look at the speed of trust, on the character side of trust, there's integrity and there's intent. Intent is what your agenda is. So if you help them kind of reorganize where now their agenda is that I'm sharing something beautiful and seeing, by knowing and understanding and asking questions and autonomy, supporting them and being compassionate, finding out what life's like on their planet, is there's something in here that we can offer or present to them that may benefit them in that fashion. So you're not it's funny because I had a car salesman once that said, I asked him, what is the objective of talking to somebody to create interest? And he says, well, to sell them the product. He's a car salesman. I said, no, it's to basically create a relational health, a rapport, and see if in that rapport, there's something that bubbles up from it where we can share. That's it. Because I'm not a salesperson. I mean, when I was in college, I went one summer up north looking to do construction, and the job wasn't available. So we looked in the paper, my best friend and I, and they had Cutco cutlery, and we got the stuff. And I went to the first door, and I said, I can't do this. There's no way. So I get that feeling, but that feeling was that I don't want to bother people. But
Yeah.
in this, I can tell you, I don't think in my whole 20 plus years that the offer or talking to people about, and you do it in a calm way where you're not trying to get something from somebody, you're simply opening. So I think if you make them aware of that and they start to do some introspection into, if you hadn't talked to them about this, their life would not be as amazing as it is now. And just create that awareness, and that'll help it bubble up. You can't rationalize it. You have to kind of let it happen naturally. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. It's an art, I think.
Oh, it
Yeah,
is an art.
for
It is
sure.
an art. But
Yeah.
but the
We're gonna
thing
get
is,
better.
in the art, see, right now that's your ego talking.
Working to get better. Well, I just kind of want to.
no, getting better. That part is awesome.
Oh,
I'm saying is that getting out of the way,
yeah.
saying that, just like, again, it's practice, right? It's practice. Practice this and ask lots of questions. Find out what inside of them are the things that they're not happy with and would love to change. And then show them that you have a match. It's kind of like when you fly fish, right? There's different hatches that occur at different times of the year. And you want to use a fly that matches the hatch, because that way the trout or whatever, they want that because that's what they want. You want to find out what they want, what's important to them. And that's what the side of building rapport or trust, or the agenda side, right? The intent side, is that your intention is not to get them to do anything. Your agenda is to share something and be compassionate to their needs, and have them understand, and then to have them do the same to others.
Mhm.
Cool.
All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're out of time. I wanted to end by saying tomorrow, I'm going to have Rachel put this up in a second, but tomorrow I've been invited to Helen Irwin, a dear conscious leadership friend of mine, is basically doing a conscious. She's going to have me on as a guest, and we're going to talk about conscious conversations. I'm going to have Rachel put that up there. The second announcement I wanted to make is that we will not, since the 4th of July is in the first Tuesday of July, we won't be having one on that day. But thank you guys so much. And I really congratulate you for working on this. This is the most important work you can do in your life. Moving from the point of recognizing first that you're not okay, and then making the decision that you're going to work on this, can change everything for you. You're building a new programming for yourself and organize your life in the future around what matters most to you. Doing this work, moving beyond your personal mind and and if you don't like the word ego, use your personal mind. That seems to be less offensive to most people. But bottom line, getting that out of the way to fully experience the joy and the incredible world we live in from the standpoint of us being in control of our lives and our health, and doing the things necessary to get rid of that stuff from our previous program, that stored trauma that's triggering us and keeping us from really enjoying the full nature of being present in the moment. So God bless you guys, and thanks so much. Bye.